Good morning to Dr. Ken and our fellow classmates. Today our group will discuss about humanity in the age of speech. I am Cherry Stan and she is Chen Yixin and she is Hei Yijie. In this humanity in the age of speech, we will talk about speech is talking. Talking is a speech as well. Talking is our natural, so it is with talking that we should begin our history of media and the consequences. In this chapter, we will talk about 3 topics, which is why we talk, what talk did, and 8 medium attribute in speech. Before I start the topic, why we talk, we should know these great features, which name Plato. He is a first philosopher and the first media critic, and he is the first how to get the truth. Plato want to know the truth, and he found the method is called dialectic. What is the meaning of dialectic? Dialectic is reason discussions, a kind of debate in which real people present arguments and other real people affirm them by means of logic. In this sentence, is we discuss to reason to get a truth, to get a logic. How do you think Plato would respond to the cultural dominance of television and cinema? Plato has responded to this cultural dominance of television and cinema. He said, to think is to be active. Passively is the death of the mind. Okay. This has shown in the Republic book, which in part of the story, Plato allegory of the cave. Lowest form of consequences is that of prisoners in the dark staring at the image, and he would be quite in image. He would think that we were enhanced by lowest form of thinking. Want to know more this story about allegory of the cave in the Republic book? I will ask you all to watch the video.
What is reality? Knowledge, the meaning of life. Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road or across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game. What is reality? Knowledge, the meaning of life. Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road or across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game, a window of opportunity, or an all too short-lived flicker of flame. 2,400 years ago, one of history's most famous thinkers said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. Pretty cheery, right? That's actually what Plato suggested in his allegory of the cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic, in which the Greek philosopher envisioned the ideal society. What is reality? Knowledge, the meaning of life. Big topics you might tackle figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road or across an ocean, a climb, a war, a book, a thread, a game, a window of opportunity. opportunity, or an all too short-lived flicker of flame. 2,400 years ago, one of history's most famous thinkers said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. Pretty cheery, right? That's actually what Plato suggested in his Allegory of the Cave, found in Book 7 of the Republic, in which the Greek philosopher envisioned the ideal society by examining concepts like justice, truth, and beauty. In the allegory, a group of prisoners have been confined in a cavern since birth, with their backs to the entrance, unable to turn their heads, and with no knowledge of the outside world. Occasionally, however, people and other things pass by the cave opening, casting shadows and echoes onto the wall of the captive's face. The prisoners name and classify these illusions, believing they're perceiving actual entities. Suddenly, one prisoner is freed and brought outside for the first time. The light hurts his eyes, and he finds the new environment disorienting. When told that the things around him are real, while the shadows were mere reflections, he cannot believe it. The shadows appeared much clearer to him, but gradually his eyes adjust until he can look at reflections in the water, at objects directly, and finally at the sun, whose light is the ultimate source of everything he has seen. The prisoner returns to the cave to share his discovery, but he is no longer used to the darkness and has a hard time seeing the shadows on the wall. The other prisoners think the journey has made him stupid and blind, and violently resist any attempts to free them. Plato introduces this passage as an analogy of what it's like to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. Most people are not just comfortable in their ignorance, but hostile to anyone who points it out. In fact, the real-life Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, and his student Plato spends much of the Republic disparaging Athenian democracy, while promoting rule by philosopher kings. With the cave parable, Plato may be arguing that the masses are too stubborn and ignorant to govern themselves. But the allegory has captured imaginations for 2,400 years because it can be read in far more ways. Importantly, the allegory is connected to the theory of forms developed in Plato's other dialogues, which holds that, like the shadows on the wall, things in the physical world are flawed reflections of ideal forms, such as roundness or beauty. In this way, the cave leads to many fundamental questions, including the origin of knowledge, the problem of representation, and the nature of reality itself. For theologians, the ideal forms exist in the mind of a creator. For philosophers of language viewing the forms as linguistic concepts, the theory illustrates the problem of grouping concrete things under abstract terms. And others still wonder whether we can really know that the things outside the cave are any more real than the shadows. As we go about our lives, can we be confident in what we think we know? Perhaps one day a glimmer of light may punch a hole in your most basic assumptions. Will you break free to struggle towards the light, even if it costs you your friends and family? Or stick with comfortable and familiar illusions? Truth or habit? Light or shadow? Hard choices. But if it's any consolation, you're not alone. There are lots of us down here.
Okay, this is the story about Plato giving the response to allegory of the cave in the Republic book. Do you all understand this story now? Okay. This story actually is from prisoners in the cave. They don't know they in the cave is dark and don't see the sun anymore. One prisoner go out the cave and the sun, and he saw the image, 影子 image. So this is the change about the active. Let's talk about to think is the active, and the prisoner is passively, is the dead of the mind. They still in the cave, they don't know how to think, the active, they don't know have the image on the outside. So this is how the Plato responds to the cultural dominance of television and cinema. Okay, now we move to why we talk. Before I start this topic, I would like you all watch again the video about a failure to communicate.
Excuse me? Hello? Hey! I'm a human being. If you don't want to help, at least say so.
Hello, I am deaf. I may have trouble comprehending you. Thank you for your consideration. Usually, I read your lips to understand you.
Oh.
If you like, you could let this convert your speech to text for me.
Okay. Could you tell me how to text?
Want to try again? Attention passengers. All is well. Thank you. Low power shutting down.
Okay!
Attention passengers. Line 4 is delayed for 1 hour. Thank you.
So have you imagined if you don't communicate the others, you will fail to show your information or give the information to other people. So why we talk? Maybe you can say natural selection. When human born in the earth and he grow up to 3 years old or 4 years old, he can open up the mouth and start to talk. So that's why we talk, because natural selection. Everyone know, like, understand? And ancestors of human began talk because help them to do something such as make better tools, share more information, and exchange gossip, and so on. Proto-human lived in small groups millions of years ago. They supposed to want to pass off their genes and not give a whit about other strangers. Thus, cooperation with other group people never evolves. They live in small groups and they don't want to pass other genes to other people. So in the evolutionary speaking, one way to make cooperation split in species is to make cheating costs. What is cheating costs? I take an example. One group have 3 or 4 people or 5 people, let's say. One person is a cheater and he's cheating you. When you realize he cheating you, you will, what is your response? What is your thing about this cheater? You will stay away from him, right? So at the same time, the people who are observed, the same group who are observed this cheater, they also avoid the cheater. And then the cheater will develop a bad reputation, like this picture. So many people say these are cheater, and these people have a bad reputation. And then no one will cooperate with him, so that's why he's cheating very costly. And at the last, his gene decline in the population. This is the essential time cheating cost. Now we go to theory of costly signaling. Dessalus is the writer of the book Why We Talk. Proposes that this criterion was the ability to communicate relevance. What is relevance? Relevance means utterance. Utterances is expressions. What you talk about, express to someone that will profit a listener and thereby recommend the speaker as an ally, as your partner. Relevance is good to you. Relevance help you a lot. Why I say that? Because more relevant you are, more allies you will have. More allies you will have, the larger of your coalition. Coalitions mean partnership. Larger your coalition, more likely it will be dominate the band. Dominate means power and influence over others. The greater your coalition's dominance of the band, the greater your creative thinking. The greater your creative thinking, the greater your creative thinking, the faster your relevance producing genes will be spread toward the population. So that's why relevance can help you a lot. Now we go to what talking did. Talking was the first uniquely human medium, and setting aside gesture, more than 100,000 years, it was only medium we knew. In that time, there's no writing, no printing, no audiovisual medium, and of course, no internet. According to our post theory of media effects, speech should have a profound impact on early human social practices and values. It should have formed the basis of a distinct talking culture in the distinct talking era from 180,000 BC to 3,500 BC. BC is before Christ. It have two evidence to test this theory, this post theory. This post theory, talking was the first uniquely human medium. The first is primary evidence in the early hunter-gatherers, like the picture. This is a picture about early hunter-gatherers. But this primary evidence very thin because they left remarkable little in the way of physical artifacts. One can learn something of ancient hunter-gatherers by studying their modern counterpart standard technique in the field. But these comparisons are problematic because they only learn in the fields. For example, the hunter should learn the one language, one word about the technique, making a weapon, making arms, hunter arms. So they only learn one language. But we have secondary evidence. Secondary evidence is very helpful and make good effects to us and the ancestors' time. Daily observation of modern intimate groups like the family, circle, circle of friends at workplace. We observe the people talking, communicate, and we learn the language as all. And like you see your family, and you are a child, you see your family communicate. You also will learn the one language like Chinese and English. So in that time, they're talking through business, face to face, verbal communication. They learn another language, another words. Daily observations, how speech and memory shape our intimate groups. So this is secondary evidence, proof the theory like this. Talking was the first uniquely human medium. Okay, I have prepared some questions about my part. I hope you all will answer these three questions. The first is, what is the method to get the truth which is found by Plato? Anyone can answer? Yes, correct. Good, very good. Clap your hand, please. Yeah, this is we discuss to get the logic and the truth. Second, in the theory of causally signaling, Descartes proposes that this criterion was the ability to communicate. Who can answer this question? Yes, correct. Good. Clap your hands. Third question is very easy. What is the first uniquely human medium? A. Writing. B. Printing. C. Audiovisual media. D. Talking. I want you all answer this question because it's very easy. Please loudly. Donkey, yes, very good. Talking. Okay, now I pass my time to Tay Yijie present the first medium attribute in speech.
Okay, hello. And last week, the first group have already presented the media attribution, right? So, but now I will go into deeply, so please pay attention. Okay, the first is the accessibility. Media attribution is high accessibility. Now I am speaking to all of you, right? I'm talking you with my mouth, and you guys hear from me, and your brain was capable of encoding and decoding the language, so you can get the information from me, right? Okay. The next is the network attribution diffuse. And what is diffuse? Diffuse is spread or caused to spread over a wide area or among a large number of people. According to our theory, diffuse media networks will equalize social practices realized within and around them. Equalize means to establish relations of rough parity among members. Diffuse networks make everyone equal as far as communication is concerned. First, diffusion blocks the route to medium monopolization and inequality. This is true in intimate speech networks today. The group, such as the family and your friends or the workplace. Of course, your parents is still your parents and the boss is still the boss, and it is not equalized, you know. Even if you hold formal authority, you need to get along to be an effective leader. Members of team must be respected, and they will have their say, and everyone will be allowed. An equal authority, in this society, the adult is more authority than the children, and the man is more than the woman, right? Okay. Next is the cultural value is egalitarianism. Oh, sorry. The fact that everyone was going to be able to speak and listen had to be accommodated ethically, and it was via a Ralph-hewn egalitarianism. Okay, for the example, office managers are not allowed to muzzle anyone capriciously. Equal access to speech and hearing promoted the notion that property should be held in common, that goods and food in particular should be shared, and that everyone had a duty to take care of everyone else. Okay, remember, if you bring something, you should bring enough to share to everyone, okay? Okay, the next is the privacy. Media attribution is low privacy. And what is identity? For the example, now I have a gun with the silencers and flash suppressors. So if I shoot a guy, that these guys would not know who shot him and where the shooter shot him. This is because this would enable us to attack them without them knowing where we are. It's simple to imagine a situation in which it would be advantageous for us to be able to talk or listen to them without giving away for our position, that is, our identities. Okay, now is the number for you guys to memorize it for 10 seconds, okay? Okay, can anyone tell me what the number is? Can anyone? It's really difficult, right? Okay, now I have a guy's man here. Also memorize for 10 seconds, okay? Okay, now I have 4 people in here, and do you know what guys is this? Can anyone tell me? Yes, it's the third one. Our brain is easily to remember face, not a number, long number, because you probably don't everyone remember if these guys stand at here and talk to you, you will memorize more easily, because everyone remember your face and voice as well, which means the minute they see you or hear you speak, you are going to give you your positions here. Okay. Okay, now is the network attribution is connected. The identities of those on the network as well as who communicated what to whom will be widely known. Following our theory, connected networks will open social practices. Open means making known who is doing with whom. That nearly every human culture has hidden from public gaze. There was no place to hide. In the hunter-gatherer band, the code implied that band members must speak honestly and truthfully about things that affected the entire band, which in this confined context was visual everything. In contrast, people who keep things for themselves or hide things from the group or consistently lie to others would be condemned as selfish and also will be deemed untrustworthy. So be truth, okay? Okay, and is going to fidelity. Okay, now you imagine you are in the field of daisies and you see the sky and you cannot hear the sounds. Okay, you see the sky and you hear the birds and you smell the daisies and taste the honeysuckle. or few bearing sounds. If you talk this to the people who did not in this class, they will sense what you say, but he or she cannot feel that what you're feeling, right? Because the speech represented data from all five senses. First is vision, and the second is sound, and the third is smell, and taste, and feeling. Speech is a 5-to-1 chord, so you can feel all this from me because I'm giving a speech. Okay, now I want to introduce this. This is the motivated signs, and their form is determined by the thing they signify. That means that this is disease, it must be the disease, it cannot be anything. But in the arbitrary signs, there is no necessary relationship between the sign and the thing it signifies. So I can say the disease is equal to the toaster, no matter what I say. So here have a nice capture this phenomenon. Is a picture is worth 1,000 words. Speech is a low fidelity medium. Network attribution is symbolic. The only thing you will be able to send and receive will be symbolic symbols, arbitrary signs that must be encoded and decoded. According to our theory, symbolic media network should conceptualize social practices and values that emerge within them. Conceptualize means to make things observed into abstract things. Okay, for example, this is the two dancers, but can you see what is this picture? Is abstract ideas. So this is means the conceptualize from observe into abstract ideas. The reason is this: if humans are compelled to use a mode of communication built on arbitrary signs, then they will begin to play with those signs and build system of ideas out of them. Speech forces humans to use arbitrary signs. Okay, now is going to volume. Okay, media attribution is low. Now I want to introduce these guys. This man is called Jasimha Ravirala. He have a speech on March 24, 2007. The lecture is titled Personality Development Concepts. It's not very important, but he talked about 120 hours speech. It's the longest speech in the history. It's really annoying as well. We can make a rough estimate based on the well-established practice of limiting lectures to about 15 minutes. And in this 15 minutes can produce 7,500 words. Okay, how many people can we talk to at once? Do you know? Have anyone know? Yes. Okay. The answer is can 800 people without aid of any special technology, like the amphitheater or a megaphone. Network attribution is the practical capacity of a human speech to transmit information is low. Media with low capacity will give rise to constrained networks. That is, network is which the rate of transmission between nodes is limited. Social practices is economize. Economize means promote spare, efficient use of resources. Okay, now is the question. The first question is, what is the three media in accessibility? It's really easy. It's dog. Thank you. Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. My answer is wrong. And the second question, what is the five sense and the speech represents data? Five sense I have taught. Can raise out your hand and tell me your answer. Is FHI, right? Yeah, is correct. Thank you. And the third question is, how many people can we talk to at once? I told that already. Yes, at 100. Okay, thank you. And now going to my friends.
Hello, I'm Chen Xin, and I'm going to talk about the last four attributes of speech. And the fifth attribute of speech is velocity, and it means in this case, velocity means the speed, such as how fast your message and your information can pass between the senders and the recipients. And so, imagine a situation that you and your friends have a conversation face to face. So once you say something, your words and your voice can be easily heard by your partners. So the time between is very almost immediately. So we can draw a conclusion that speech is in high velocity. So how much time passes between the moment you want to say something and the moment you say it? So we have some scientific proof. So according to the psychologist, words fly out of your mouth at 1,128 feet per second, which is mostly equal to the rifle bullet. Yep. And since we conclude that speech is in high velocity, so we may know its network attributes. It's dialogic. So network attribute is defined as when people communicate through a particular medium, they become linked by the medium. When they become linked by the medium, a network appears. So this demonstrates that people are connected by a particular medium. So the network attribution is dialogic. And here dialogic means conversation. It's a rapid exchange of information, and it's an interactive communication. So from the dialogic, we may know its social practice is democratized. And democratize may remind you of the word of democracies. And according to the author Marshall T. Paul, democratize means deliberative and consensual. And here, deliberative means careful thought and discussions. And consensual means a decision agreed by the people involved in your conversation. So the reason is that dialogic network affords humans a low-cost opportunity to exchange opinions about important issues. So there is a phenomenon reflected by the democratized. It's called democratic lines. So this is about discussing important issues until rough consensus or the face-saving appearance of consensus is reached. And we call this process as negotiation. And so its cultural value is deliberativism. So from my understanding, deliberativism means deep consideration. And this idea includes everyone should speak for themselves and their words should be equally weighed. But there are some exceptions between, there are also some exceptions like the boss's word is more higher than an employee's, and adult's word is more authority than children's words. So here is the fifth attribution of the velocity, and now we move to the next attribution. It's range, and it indicates that how far the speech can reach. And now we're going to see the features that speech have. So the range of human voice is very short, so the same as its practical range. The first features is speech likes a signal move over an area like a radio wave rather than point to point such as the telephone. So as you can see in this picture, so this picture is wrong because speech is interactive communication. And second one is voice can expand in all directions. There is a big process or improvements in the human's evolution. So in order to survive, ancestors register an enormous range of sonic signal from very weak one to very strong one. So our auditory system can step up the soft signals to make them audible, means make them hearable, and steps down powerful ones to make them safe to listen. And so we can easily draw a conclusion that speech is a short-range medium with small reach. I say short-range because it's just not effective beyond about 20 or 30 feet. And so you have to watch what you say. But in fact, they don't carry very far. So you needn't to be so careful about what you are talking about. And so this gives rise to the network attribute is intensive. Here, intensive networks means a lot of effort or activity in a short period of time. And according to the author Marshall Tipo, intensive networks simplify the social practice. So, simplify means make different things the same. So, as you can see in this picture, everyone sits together to have a conversation. So, you can see that speech is a short-range medium because, your group member can hear your voice, can hear your, opinions. So, and other group members can receive the information from the other group members who are now talking. And so we conclude that it's social practice, it's simplified. The reason is that people in specific networks are less likely to meet the unfamiliar people, things, and ideas. So you tend to know the people who are similar with you. So you already talk to them regularly. So they are like you or become like you. A long-range medium may afford them the chance to learn from the people who are different from them. But since in the age of speech, speech is a short range, so people in the age of speech do not have this opportunity and they don't want to encounter with unfamiliar people. So the simplified shapes its cultural value, monism. And monism is a philosophy concept, and its definition is there is just one supreme being existed in the origin of the world. So it's very hard to understand, but we can just skip it. And for the monism, in the age of speech, there is one kind of person, yours, and there is one kind of things, those things around you. So there is no explicit connection. It's a connection between us or them. So your social cycle will be maybe tend to be similar, not completely the same with your friends, but you will still have some difference. So next we move to the persistence. Persistence means the duration of existing. Is it permanent or is it temporary? So before I draw the conclusion, I would introduce a medium that is it's in high persistence. It's called skywriting. And as you can see in the picture, skywriting is a process of using a small aircraft and able to expel some special smoke during the flight and fly in a certain patterns that create some words in order to make to let the people in the ground can understand what it's writing about. So this skywriting is writing a Trump. But however, skywriting is worthless for data storage, but it is good for propaganda. So comparing to the skywriting, we may easily know that speech is in low persistence because you cannot see it, you cannot hear it, smell it, taste it, or touch it. So all you can do is just remember. But however, there are also some restrictions for the memory. The first is small storage, because short memory is not reliable, and you transform them into a long-term memory is very difficult. And the third one is low fidelity, as I mentioned by the Teijie in the first 4 attributions of speech. Your eyes can catch the pictures very easily, but when you just in the age of speech, you do not have maybe audiovisual medium, so all you can do just listening to what you hear. So when you're listening, you can just get an abstract idea. And the third one is impermanence. So since we are born, we are constantly forgetting things. So that's why memory has some restrictions. So we can conclude that speech is not persistent, then it encourages substitutive networks. And here, substitutive means find another thing to replace old things. So you can say that new data supplant or replace the old data, because your memory has strong restrictions to store the total amount of information that you received. So we move to the social practice, ritualize. And here, ritualize means to use the form of expressions to store the content. So from my understanding, ritualize means to perfect or act something when without thought, means it's a natural reflection of yours. And when you use it, you don't have to think about it. So the such as how we greet someone, how we express our appreciation, and how we express our great, it's your natural reflection, right? So, as a human being in the age of speech, we have limited ways to store the new content. So we may use some mnemonic devices and behavior routines to help us memorize the new content of the speech. And here, mnemonic devices means something as a very short poem or a special word used to help a person remember something, like this. And then the substitutive network attributes give rise to its cultural value, internalism. Internalism means something is permanent. So little things could be recorded neatly to be accommodated via internalism. And the same things happened over and over again. They do not generally change very much, but or rather say there was little evidence to prove that they have changed very much. So we move to the last attribute of speech is searchability, and the ability enables you to search the information in your memory. So speech is not searchable at all because your memory is the only storage devices available for you. And memory is very searchable for the 4 reasons. First is it's very cheap and possible to search your memory, and it costs nothing to remind you of your memory. So we say memory is very cheap and possible. And the second one is you can ask others for help. Maybe not only you can memorize the speech, but also your friends can, such as you and your friends having a conversation last night, but in the morning you forgot what we are talking about, so you can just ask your friends, what are we talking about last night? So it's second one, you can ask others for help. And the second one is very fast and instantaneous. And the fourth one is, and its search function is very responsive. It means, responsive means that when you see something, it can rapidly remind you of something related. And for its network attribute, it's mapped. And mapped means sharing information to everyone, and it is visible. So something important that you memorize in your mind can be searched on your own. So let's give rise to the social practice, amateur rights. And usually, amateur rights means empowering the individual to do things independently. But in the age of speech, amateur rights means looking for and getting information independently. So the reason for the rights of amateur rights is things everyone in fact knows or can easily find out everything. And everyone is an expert in everything, which is to say there is no experts, just amateurs. So the deeper comprehension for amateur rights is, first, everyone is on the same page. This sentence means we know a lot of the same things, and usually these things we call it common sense. And the second one is different kinds of knowledge and different kinds concentrated in certain groups. It's unequal distributions of knowledge and unequal access to the information. And such as men don't know how to wear makeup, and also the women don't know the knowledge about the cars. So that's unequal distributions of knowledge. And the last one for the searchability is its cultural value, individualism. And individualism is the idea that each person should be autonomous. So means independent to make your own decisions. So it's about a human need for autonomy. And any real person will have common sense, and we know how to see, how to cook, how to express your appreciation. But people, if you do not know the common sense, your personhood will be in doubt. And people who were needlessly dependent on others will look down upon. And we share information freely and do anything for our family members and friends. And we don't want to have to do it regularly. But if we have to do it regularly, then there might be, the person who wants to do so may be a moach. Moach is someone who tries to get something free from others. So now let's move to the question part. So question 1, which of the following statements is not true regarding attributes of speech? A. Speech high fidelity gives rise to dialogic network. B. Speech low persistence contributes to substitutive network. C. The range of speech is short. D. Speech is an interactive communication. E. Speech's high searchability finally leads to the intensive network. Can anyone answer these questions? If no one, I will just give the... Yeah, it's correct answer. Speech high searchability finally leads to the mapped network. And question 2. Which of the following statement is not true about the features of human voice when speaking? A. Human voice can spread in all directions. B. The movement of human voice is like radio wave. C. Speech is a point-to-point way of communication. D. Human voice is in low range. See, speech is an interactive, not point-to-point, such as the telephone. And the third question is, which of the following statement is not true about amateur rights according to the author Marshall T. Paul? A. Amateur rights usually means empowering the individual to do things independently. B. The situation that everyone knows little things in some certain aspects lead to amateur rights. C. We know a lot of same things. These things we usually call common sense. D. Different kinds of knowledge concentrated in certain groups. Can anyone answer this question? Thinks none. The correct answer is B. Because according to the author, everyone knows the same things in certain aspects. So everyone is an expert, but which is to say there is no experts, just amateurs. Now we move to the conclusion part for humanity in the age of speech. I just write down some key sentences to help you better understand what we are talking about in this presentation. First is, it is human nature to talk and share information. And the first medium that human use in communicating is talk. And it is what we talk about all this presentation. And the 8 attributes of speech can conclude. And speech is high accessibility, low privacy, a low fidelity, low volume, high velocity, low range, low persistence, and high searchability medium. So that's all our presentation. I do hope that our presentation can help you understand this chapter. Thank you.
So anyway, so hopefully we'll learn from as we go along. We'll get a little better at this, and you will be better understanding this because you've been exposed to it. With Team 2, nobody had been exposed to it. Nobody understood it. The team itself was struggling with the concept. Team 3 has clarified it a little bit as by taking a specific medium, speech, and now applying the attributes to this specific medium. Now we're going to go through each of the other media, and each team will be explaining the attributes of each of the other media. And so, again, you can expect more of the same in that sense, so it is important that you understand that more or less the nature of these attributes. And as I explained in the last class, some of the way he's using these words are not exactly the way that we might interpret them in our everyday speech, and so we that's where we get a little bit confused is when his use of these terms, of these attributes, in applying them to the analysis of different media. They're not exactly the way we would necessarily use them. Like I say, we wouldn't be. Well, first off, we don't talk about these sorts of attributes on a daily basis. This is his unique approach to analyzing media. And so you probably have never been exposed to it before, and you probably never will again. He is alone in using these categories of attributes as far as I know. And he has put his own interpretation, his own definition to what each of these words means in the context of media. And so that's where we're having to learn. Even though these are words we've heard before, we haven't heard them before in this context and applied in this way. So that's what makes it complicated. You think you understand. You think, like I think Group 2 made the mistake of looking at it and thinking, oh, we understand that term. Well, no, you didn't, because you didn't fully understand how he's applying the term. So there's a difference between the dictionary definition and how Dr. Poe is applying these terms. And so that's where you need to be very alert as you make your presentations. How is Dr. Poe applying the terms? And you may have to all go back in order for yourselves to fully comprehend it. If you need some help, you may have to go back to what was it? The introduction, I guess, or whatever the chapter that explains how he's applying the attributes. It may not. If you try to just go strictly from your chapter, you may be a little bit lost, because you may need to go back to his original explanation in order to understand his application in your chapter. So, like I say, that's why I introduced the second book. I got the second book adopted because it's a little clearer. It doesn't have these abnormal applications of vocabulary, and there's more scientific. And that's good. I mean, science is, obviously, I'm not against science, but his approach to analyzing the media is unique. So it's not science that everybody accepts. It's his approach to analyzing this. So it makes it a little more complicated. It's, if we were talking about science, even like physics, there'd be some common terms that if you don't understand totally right now, you kind of heard them, and it'd be easier for you to, in some ways, easier for you to understand if we were talking physics than with new vocabulary that you don't know. Than in this case, using vocabulary that you think you know, but you may not know by the way he uses it, and so that's where it gets more complicated. It's easy to get fooled by thinking you understand a term and then not understanding exactly how he's applying the term. That's more complicated than learning a whole new vocabulary in some ways, because you already have. It goes back to what we were talking about from class 1. This whole idea that we have this conceptual framework in our mind, and it's made up of concepts. Now he suddenly is taking our concepts that are already in our brain, and he's saying, "No, I'm going to use these concepts in a different way." And so now you have concepts that aren't working right, because he's taking these concepts and saying, "No, that's not what it means. In this case, it's going to mean this over here." And so he's taking concepts that are already stuck in your brain, and he's redefining them for his use with this scientific approach of looking at media. So, like I say, in some ways that's harder than if he totally made up new words, because they're not in your conceptual framework yet. So you could plug them in differently. And now he's kind of boggling our minds a little bit, stirring up our conceptual framework a little bit. So it's a challenge, but his contribution to the science of communication is valuable. His understanding all these concepts that we're talking about that Team 3 has explained to us are valuable. As we proceed, we can begin to compare speech. Okay, we're starting to understand the attributes of speech. They did a pretty good job of that. Again, just because we're so unfamiliar with these terms, we're struggling just a little bit. And so now Team 4 will bring in manuscripts. Now they'll use these same attributes, and they'll look at manuscripts. So what is their volume? What is their velocity? What is, so again, hopefully Team 4 will help us with this. They will help clarify even more the use of these terms, because at this point I would dare say that we're still struggling a little bit with Poe's definition of these terms. It's not absolutely clear. Some of these they seem to, how do I say this? Some of them are close enough to the same that we're trying to figure out and separate them. Velocity, range, all these terms. Again, we're struggling with the fact that we know what they mean in everyday use. What we don't know, what we still are struggling with a little bit, is how they're used by Poe in this use. And so normally, for example, we would presume in everyday use, if you throw a baseball in high velocity, what's its range? It's a high correlation. You throw it fast, it goes far, right? That's not the way Poe is using these terms. And so there's not, if he were, they would be almost synonymous, and you wouldn't have to have two terms. So he's not using it the same way. And so our everyday understanding of these terms has to be thrown out the window a little bit. You have to re-memorize what these terms mean by Poe in this environment, in this situation. So for all the teams, I think probably during the entire semester, people will be struggling a little bit with these terms because of this fact that they go contrary to our everyday understanding, and therefore we keep falling back into our old understanding of these terms, and they're not used like our everyday understanding. So it's important that you try to. This is a good chance. I will put the PowerPoint up on the Moodle site, and you can go through. Like I say, the PowerPoint is a little bit confusing, the same as the presentation, just a little bit, in that you need to pay attention to when they're talking about the attribute and the characteristics of the attribute. So there's multiple slides about the characteristics. And so when they're talking about amateurism and stuff, that's a characteristic, of an attribute. And so don't get confused by that. That's the one thing I'd say is maybe you might want to put for the next groups, maybe put the name of the attribute in the top of the slide, and with each of the slides you use to explain attributes of that attribute, because otherwise other people might get a little bit confused between the attributes and the characteristics of the attribute. As I said, I'm not. Well, this was not my choice of a textbook for this level of a university course. I would use this for a graduate course. I would not use this with many of you are in your first semester or second semester. This is not the book I choose for you, but I don't have the choice. This has been approved previously, and so what I did get accomplished was to get the second textbook approved as an additional textbook, and frankly, I'm going to give much more emphasis to the second textbook because I think that's a little clearer and a little bit, and it also comes back to one of the terms that we just used, relevance. Even in education, again, going back to the very first day, one of the problems with this is relevance to me. Is this relevant? Is this approach relevant to you? And I'm saying, not really. That I'm afraid that you will remember nothing out of this textbook, and yet I have to teach this textbook because I don't think it's as relevant. It's relevant, so relevant that you'll remember it for another year, another half a year, another month. I'm not sure how long you remember this stuff. I doubt you're going to remember it very long because it's not relevant. You can't find, most of you are not finding a lot of relevance in Poe's textbook. And so relevant is the term. Relevant in speech and in all of it. If you can't find relevance, you will not remember it. Almost by definition, again, going back to the idea of a conceptual framework, and you're plugging these concepts into your brain, relevance in that setting means you found a place to stick that concept and screw it in, right? You found a place to put it. And it helps you make sense of the concepts around it. Hopefully some of you can plug these concepts into your brain and help you understand things. There is, like I said, there's some scientific understanding here of value. But unless you're planning to work in your PhD in communications and are already thinking that way, you may have a hard time finding relevance and be able to stick it into your conceptual framework and remember it long term. Because that's what you have to do to remember something long term. You need to find relevance, and you need to stick it into find a place in your conceptual framework to screw it in, and now it relates to other concepts, and it's stuck there, and it's valuable to you. And that's, like I said, what I'm missing here a little bit is how is this relevant to your age of student. Again, if you're working on your PhD or even a master's degree, maybe a little more so, more relevant as you're starting exploring the scientific aspects of communications more. Now it becomes maybe more relevant. In this class, I mean, I hate to put it down. I tell you as speakers, don't apologize for what you're teaching. But in this case, I am apologizing for what I'm teaching. I'm hoping that you can find, that you understand that you get something of value in this. But it's going to be somewhat challenging for you to stick it in your conceptual framework and say, this is truly relevant to me, something I'm going to remember long term. So, again, one thing we do get out of this is you're learning how to make presentations. And this group did a very good job of making presentations, good eye contact, good expression, a lot of very good things in their delivery. Their PowerPoint was good. The little bit I've kind of criticized is minimal compared to the good things about their presentation. I'm just saying, for all of your sake, those of you doing Poe chapters, you face this common challenge of trying to make it relevant to the rest of the students. And yet it's kind of hard, because so much of Poe's writing is about these attributes. How do you turn those attributes into something relevant to the students? I'm not sure. I'm not myself. I mean, is there relevance? Yeah. Could you maybe explain, even though one of the problems with Poe, I think, is that he insisted on creating this textbook as ages of speech. Instead, if he had taken, yes, they are ages, but one of the things he himself does acknowledge is, in essence, the media are accumulative. They build on each other. And so you start with speech, and then you go to manuscript. So what have you done? Well, you've now taken your speech and you're putting it into words. That's valuable. And you see that those attributes are going to change. For one thing, they become more searchable. But is a manuscript as searchable as a book? No, because there are not very many manuscripts. It's so hard to make manuscript after manuscript. Like I say, in some books it takes them a year, more than a year to duplicate one manuscript. So there's not many copies around the world of a manuscript. So there's not many people to share those ideas and to help spread those ideas. Now, once it becomes printed, and there's lots of volumes, because the very nature of printing, you can print 800 in an hour. So it doesn't take a year anymore to duplicate this manuscript. Now, in 1 hour, you can duplicate 800 times. Totally different, a different impact when now you've moved to the printing press and you set it up and you start printing. Now the book gets distributed. There's more common knowledge that you can share. It becomes a little bit more searchable. But even then, and that's basically, before the internet, none of the media were real searchable. They were searchable, but not real searchable. Let me put it that way. Again, when I was your age, I was still thumbing through our card catalog, trying to find sources in the library, because there was still not a computer in the library to search for them. At that time, when I was your age, we were still, the university might have had, our university was big, so it might have had multiple mainframe computers. There was no such thing. Well, the PCs were just very weak and just getting into the market when I was your age. And so not many people had a PC. There's very little software for the PC. So PCs were almost irrelevant when I was your age. And so see how much has happened since then. So we went from the age of print and the early age of print where, or not necessarily early age of print, but the age of print when we had no computer to supplement it, and we were searching through card catalogs, one card after another card. Is there something here that I can use? And so you'd end up, if you were lucky enough in the card catalog to find maybe a journal that you wanted to refer to, if you're an academic like myself, you go find and just start looking through all the volumes of that journal, because the individual articles were not in the card catalog. And so the card catalog would lead you to the name of the journal. Now you go find it in the library, and the library is huge because everything has to be in the library. If it's not in the library, you might be able to order it from another library. They might offer that service. The average student quite a few people could order from other, but that wasn't a perfect system either. So even up to my lifetime, there was very little searchability in any of the media. As I mentioned before, I think video, again, the only thing searchable is what you wrote down. Otherwise, you have to look at every video. Can we find this, especially if you're like a video editor? And you see, I remember we did a story on this a year ago. Can anybody find the old video? You go looking for the old video so you can maybe take a clip out of it for your new video or something. But that was not searchable. Until the age of computers, mankind had a very limited institutional memory, very limited. So one of the things I was going to mention is you notice 150,000 years of speech, almost no progress in humankind. The progress of humankind definitely correlates with the nature of the media. And that's one thing that, in his way, that's one thing that Poe's trying to explain to us, is that the media have been additive. They've added new attributes that have made it very, very valuable to humankind. And that's why, in my lifetime, the spread of knowledge, the spread of searchability, the institutional memories has skyrocketed. That's why they're saying that the growth of knowledge is so great that if you're learning something like a science in your first year of university, it will be outdated by your fourth year of the university, because the rate of knowledge is growing so fast. And why is it growing so fast? Part of it is how quickly it spreads, how easily accessible it is, how searchable it is. These are all attributes that make the internet unique compared to all other media that have ever existed. And yet all the other media that existed they converge into the internet. And so we haven't lost the value of any of the other media. They've all added together, and they found one home into the internet. And that home has made humankind, it's totally changed our civilization, our life, our everything. Because now, all knowledge of mankind just about is right there. You're carrying it around. You can search for it, you can access it, you can share it, consume it, whatever you want to do, you're carrying it around in your pocket. That is just pretty much in your lifetimes. Most of you are, born in, I remember, so you were born in, the late 1990s, is that right? When you were born? What year? 1999, okay. So, late 1990s, you were born, and the World Wide Web was created in the early 1990s. That's where, so that was a huge leap forward, is that the average person, and I was teaching in 1995, 4 years before you were born. I was hired to teach people that were being laid off from a nuclear site, and they had to find new jobs, and I was helping retrain them during that time. Most of them had no clue how to use a PC, still. Because they maybe had some experience with the PC, but also in the early 1990s was when Microsoft finally gained a monopoly. And so if they gained any PC experience at all in the 1980s, it was now probably obsolete in the 1990s. Because it was a lot of the software was not created by Microsoft, was not compatible with Microsoft. I have a full, my book was written in a different word processor, and I cannot access it anymore. So I've had to retype everything, because in the late 1980s and early 1990s, software was not compatible with each other. So that was important. Even though Microsoft is too much of a monopoly now, I think the very fact that they gained a monopoly was an important step in our lives, because now almost all of our software is compatible. And before that, it wasn't. And so then they came along. The mouse was not commonly used until until Microsoft took over, until they got their monopoly. I was teaching desktop publishing in the 1980s. I started teaching desktop publishing, and that was, I think, the first software that used a mouse. And I remember I was teaching desktop publishing. Nowadays, InDesign is the big name. Quark Express, another big name. The predecessor to InDesign was PageMaker. And so I was teaching PageMaker and another brand that has just long disappeared. And I had the opportunity the first time after we had installed it on the computers and stuff, I had the opportunity to teach it during the summer, but I had to have, I don't remember, 14 students to teach it or they would cancel it. And so I had 11. So I asked my boss, is it okay if I get my relative to sign up so this class will make, and we can go ahead and start developing this class a little bit. So he gave me approval. So I signed up my daughter, my wife, now ex-wife, and my mother. My mother and my ex-wife were scared to death of this thing. They had no idea how to use a mouse, and they were afraid they were going to destroy something on the computer. My mother especially. My mother had straight A's in her university coursework until she took my class, and she's blamed me ever since for destroying her GPA. Because there's no way in the world I could give her an A, because she was so scared of the mouse. So this is all in our lifetime, and not that long before you guys were born. So anyway, in 1995, when I was trying to teach all these people who were working at a science in a nuclear site in America, most of them did not know how to use most of the Microsoft software or anything else, as far as that goes. Managers had never touched a PC before. They just managed. Better were the secretaries. They had to use the PC some. By then, PCs were just being distributed, so the secretaries had some knowledge, but their bosses, including, I remember, the most frustrated person I knew had a degree in computer science. But he had never touched a mouse. Because computer science in the 1980s and the 1970s, when he was getting his degree, were not with PCs. They were with mainframe computers and stuff. And so he was totally frustrated that he had no idea how to use a PC. He was out of work. He had a degree in computer science. His degree was worthless. And he was very close to suicidal. I had to really bring him down off the cliff, so to speak, to help him regain a sense of positive attitude. So here we are. In your lifetime, this has really taken off. Google was being created as you were being born. Before that, there were other search engines, and they were valuable. But I'm just kind of putting things in perspective. I think Google was created, I think, the year in 1999 or 1998 or something like that. Right about the time you were born, Google was being created. And all the advantages of Google became part of our common life, where it has become a verb. You want to look for something, you Google for it, right? No matter what search engine you use, you Google for it. It's become our vocabulary. So the searchability, the range, everything has changed because all of the media have converged onto the internet. And that's, there are scary things about where we're going in mankind. There are scary things in our national and human relations. There are scary things with our relationship to the technology. There are some of the brightest minds in the world are scared about artificial intelligence. We're getting so smart, we're scaring ourselves. Literally. Will we control artificial intelligence enough so that it doesn't control us at some point in your lifetime? Will you become bionic? Will they start implanting something in your brain so you can access information even faster? Where suddenly you can be connected to a computer. Do you want to be connected to a computer? There are some serious questions here now. Very serious questions that we're talking about as part of our reality. And it's all happening so quickly And it all comes down to the additional power of each medium that was developed, and now converging onto one network that all humankind is now attached to. We're all part of this network. So in a sense, one of the experts said, basically, we're all part of one huge computer. If you think of all the connections, it has become one huge computer, and we're all part of it, in a very literal sense. If you could look at it from my perspective, it is breathtaking. You're taking it, again, you're fish in the water, and you don't notice the water you're in. I wasn't born in the water, so to speak, in the informational water. I was born a long time before that, and this is breathtaking to me. It's breathtaking every time I do a Google search and see 100 million links to whatever it is I'm Googling. What? In 1 second, bam, there it is. And my choice of any of 100 million links if I want to look at them, as if I could. But there they are. Mind-boggling stuff to me. And where we're going, I'm not sure. It's scary, exciting, great potential, and some threat, great threat to humankind, depending on what happens. It's never been easier for a dictator to know where you're at, to implant a chip in your rear end or wherever they want to implant it. And now they know where you're at all times. The next step may be knowing what you're thinking. Who knows? They're trying to interpret thought. So in order to use a computer chip to teach you something, that means the next step is how to get stuff out of your brain and know what you're thinking. Scary. You want everybody knowing what you're thinking? You want anybody knowing what you're thinking? So this is a brave new world. You have to be brave to go forward right now. I mean, it's exciting, but you have to be brave because things are happening that can, like I say, amazing things that can change things for the positive, that can turn the world into paradise, literal paradise. Our ability to desalinate water, our ability to use solar energy, our ability to, make. If any of you if you have not watched Peter Diamandis' video, among other places you can, it's at TED.com. It's called Abundance. Peter Diamandis, Abundance. It's on one of my front page of one of my websites at virtual-university.us. Paints a glorious picture. Because what he points out in his video on abundance is that all the things that are causing, that most of the things that are causing the poor, they're making a real difference between the rich and the poor, are going to become so cheap that the poorest will be able to afford them. He pointed out that in the time of Napoleon, he made special utensils for his special guests out of aluminum, because aluminum was more valuable than gold. Now, in America at least, we use aluminum foil to wrap up sandwiches to send to school with the kids, and when they're done, we throw it away. Aluminum's worth almost nothing now. But during Napoleon's time, it was more valuable than gold. And his point is, that's what's going to happen to energy. Energy is going to be so common, it's worth almost nothing because it's so common. Everybody's going to be solar, hooked into the solar energy. Water, once you have energy, you have water. You desalinate the oceans. You can start irrigating the deserts. The Sahara Desert can become a great farm once you put water on it. So nobody should go hungry in the near future. There's no excuse for anybody on earth to go hungry, or to lack energy, or to lack water, to lack knowledge. We're all walking around with a university education in our pocket, and our ability to communicate that university education will become better and better. And so everybody will have the university education in their pocket, and lifelong learning in their pocket. What is there that will differentiate the rich and the poor? Maybe their yachts. Maybe we, as the poor, we won't be able to afford yachts, or our own personal jet, or something. But even now, the average poor person in America has things that the Amanda says a king would give his kingdom for. They have inside toilets. During Napoleon times, they didn't have inside toilets. They didn't have color TVs. What was that? That would be a miracle for them to see a color TV. They certainly didn't have a mobile phone. Most poor people in America have mobile phones. Most poor people in America have a car. What would Napoleon give for a car as he's riding around on his horse, getting a sore bottom? All these things that we just take for granted, clean water, medicine, good health care relatively. Most of the people in the world are getting better and better health care. Inoculation, so you don't get some of the deadly diseases that people died from during his time. The poorest person in the world, the poorest person in America at this point, I'll just limit it to America, the poorest person in America has things that Napoleon would give his kingdom for. So what's poor? The whole definition of poverty is changing, and it is all linked to technology, and the technology is linked to communications and our ability to search and to store memory and all this sort of stuff that we now have that began, or at least a lot of it has happened since you were born, a good share of it. And it's going forward in such a way that it's picking up speed. Our knowledge is picking up speed. Our ability to create new things, picking up speed. And a lot of it has to do with institutional memory. That's what they lacked going back to the age of speech. There was no institutional memory. And so for 150,000 years, there was not much progress. Because we learn through our institutional memory is one of the most valuable things we have. So we can learn from our ancestors. And so they teach us something and we can pass it on and add that knowledge and give it to our children and grandchildren and so forth and move forward. And then manuscripts changed a lot. Printing, revolutionary. Multimedia in the 1800s with now suddenly you could send information, and towards the end of the 1800s send information over the airwaves and over wires, and then in the 1900s actually making it economically viable to send pictures and video and audio over the airwaves, and everybody could afford it now. Everybody could afford a radio, and everybody could afford a TV. At least in the Western countries, at least, and that developing throughout the entire world. There are still obviously tribes in the Amazon that don't have any of this stuff. They were talking about how we learn about the age of speech. There are still tribes that's all they have. They might have a little bit of writing, but they're not doing manuscripts. And so you go find some remote tribes, and they're trying to protect those tribes. They think it's valuable to keep those tribes isolated and keep technology away from them. Partly so we can study them, because they still exist there in the age of speech. In this day and age, there's still these tribes in the Amazon stuck in the age of speech. And so we can still study the age of speech because of that, because of those remote tribes. But and I'm not sure if we're really doing them a favor, but actually the whole civilization, our current civilization, says we need to protect them from us, in essence. Leave them alone. Let them stay by themselves. Give them no technology. Don't fly over them. If you can avoid flying over them, don't fly over them. And don't communicate with them. Leave them alone. Let them stay primitive. Again, I don't know how valuable that is, but that's what we've actually decided as a world civilization, that we should leave them alone. So, anyway, a lot of things we can talk about. We're out of time. And so I may try to pick up and review some of the stuff that I had in mind. But this, to me, I'm hoping you understand. I guess the main thing I'm trying to explain right now is just why this is important. Trying to help you understand the relevance of Poe's approach is that he's trying to show you how these things have all become additive, how they've changed civilization, how the world has changed because of them, and it's highlighted with where we're at today, where all the senses, pretty much, smell not so much, but most of the senses, and in a theater, even smell. Sometimes there's some theaters that include smell into their multi-sensory presentation. Not too many of those, but now all of the senses can be addressed, if we want to, with our technology, and we have all these attributes. I mean, there are, yeah. I mean, like I say, the knowledge is as cheap as dirt right now, pretty much. I mean, if you can afford dirt, you can pretty much afford the technology almost. So the whole world is changing, and you're in the middle of it. So that's the relevance. Whether it takes a whole book to explain the relevance, and whether you are really that interested in going through every medium to understand all these attributes, but that's the bottom line of it. And that was his effort in analyzing them, was to help you understand how these media have changed the world. And it's been slow, 150,000 years of speech, a little faster manuscripts, a little faster with books, a little faster. And then as we got, just out of all these, tens of thousands of years of humankind, it's only in your lifetime that's all come together. Isn't that amazing? Your lifetime. Maybe altogether almost, over 150,000 years anyway, and in your lifetime, it all came together. You should appreciate that, and be scared of that, and wonder what you can do with it as you go forward in your lives, because it's amazing, scary, wonderful, could be terrible, everything all mixed into one. Okay, thank you. Real quick, again, we'll I do a couple of things real quick. Again, we have the quiz I'll put on the internet on Monday. Those groups that did not send me multiple choice questions, send me multiple choice questions. So group 1 and 2 still owe me some questions. Your questions weren't adequate, so send them to me. And I will put them on the Moodle site so the rest of you can see the multiple choice version of the questions that groups 1 and 2 were asking. They raised questions, but they didn't put them in a format that you will see them in. You will see them in a multiple choice or a true and false format. So I need the questions from teams 1 and 2 so I can convert them into something that will appear on your quiz. And so teams 1 and 2 should want to write those questions, because then they'll know the answers to their questions. And then I'll put them on the Moodle so you can take a look at those before you take the quiz. This team did fine with their quizzes, with maybe the exception of that last one. You can get corrected. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, well, we'll I guess you're here except on Wednesday, but I'll see you again on Monday. Thank you.